One of these days, we got to fix that thing. So Dan has a new pipe smoking channel. For those of you who are still abusing tobacco, go check that out. What's it called, Dan?
It's called the Fokker Circus.
The Fokker Circus.
Yes, please go check it out.
Those Fokkers are at it again.
You know, it's. I need some subscribers. People are not taking me seriously. I got to strip naked. You know what I'm saying?
Those Fokkers are going to get us demonetized. So anyway, our topic tonight is underrated war games, and there's, I think, a fair number of games out there. I'm not sure what that was all about. I think there's a fair number of games out there, particularly like 70s era Avalon Hill and SPI games that are. There's plenty that have been kind of forgotten in the midst of time, and I think that I'm fine with that. But I do think there's a few that deserve more recognition than they get. So I kind of wanted to crowdsource that a little bit and talk about those games that I think are worthwhile. Is everything okay over there?
Yeah. I just keep talking, man. What the hell?
So whatever the folks in the chat want to point out, that's particularly cool. So let's say hello to everybody. First of all, welcome to the stream. Looks like I got to remember that the number is actually on the stream. I don't have to check it on the other one. So smoking is definitely bad for your health. But if you're going to smoking a pipe is not the most unhealthy way to do it.
Nah, we're all going to die anyways.
That's true. We're all doomed.
Yeah. And by the way, I was telling Artie, I just got a new job. I work at an old folks home in the kitchen. If anybody knows me when I get old, and if I can't wipe my own ass and I don't remember who you are, just shoot me in the face.
Oh dear.
All right.
I sympathize with that. Where that's tough to have to see that all the time. I would not
kick
want
me in the nuts first if it makes you happy. Then just shoot me in the face.
I would not want to have to deal with that every day. I can tell you that. Where is it?
Mike Anthony, smoke 430. I think I got half a pound left in my house.
Oh.
I'm Canadian. I could say that. All right.
There you go. So hopefully that won't be a big problem.
Hey, John Sai, man, what's up?
So anyway, John Sai from the sunny Philippines.
My God, it's got to be early in the morning.
So I did sub to the channel, Dan. I just subbed on my non-wargaming account, not on this account, because this account I got a lot of traffic on this account in the daily feed.
You just subbed on my channel?
Yeah. I didn't just sub. Somebody here did, though. I subbed last week or something like that.
Come on, people. Sub. John Sai. Sub on the bloody channel. I get some good tobacco from the Philippines, for God's sake.
So here's a suggestion from Jeff Beeler. The GDW 120 series games. And I think the idea here was that you're going to be able to play. They're all in a small digest-sized box. And at least all the ones I remember. That and you were supposed to be able to play them in 120 minutes. Was 1941 the Pearl Harbor one, the one that's basically the entire Pacific War, or was that called something else? Because that one actually looks neat. So for those who haven't seen it, by the way, speaking of, I don't think this is underrated, but I'm going to show it off. But it was a thing that was getting, not as much attention as it deserved for a long time. The new edition of the Third World War is out from Compass Games. I've been waiting for this thing for years. I've played it. I played the originals. I haven't played this yet, but we're definitely going to end up playing this.
Who's
at some
the
point.
designer? Ty Bomba.
Frank Chadwick.
Chadwick.
Yeah, lightly redesigned from the original 4. So it's 4 games in the original, right? It's all in one box now. And it's going to be a wee bit of a challenge to get it all in the box. So I think I can manage it. It's looking good so far. Okay, so Drew Detterer says that 1941 is Barbarossa. So 1942 is the Pacific one. Okay, because I remember there being a 1941 and a 1942. So Jason W. mentions Ancients from 3W, designed by Bill Banks. I've looked at that one. a copy that passed through my hands at one point, and I passed it on. I think in part for this exact reason. It did look simpler than I wanted, right? It is an interesting looking system, in that I think it has like 30 or 40 battles in it from all over the ancient world. So it's kind of like a universal ancient tactical system. It does look interesting, actually.
You know what? Give me a second. I'm going to be out of camera. I'm going to go get some games, okay? Because you know what I'm saying.
Dan's going to go get some games. So I'm just going to sit here and meditate for 10 minutes while Dan disappears. So John Tsai is right, of course, and there are plenty of people. Our friend of the show, Stegler, for example, pretty much doesn't punch his stuff. This is why he doesn't want to clip counters. He doesn't have to. He's going to play it on Vassal. So, if I knew I was going to play it on Vassal, then I might not bother punching the counters. On the other hand, this is something we've played locally, and we will play it locally again. So I have no problem punching it. It's 9 counter sheets. It's a lot of stuff. It's got Cough Hold, Desert Fox Deluxe. So this has acquired a bit of a mixed reputation. It's been released. So the original Desert Fox is a Richard Berg design that originally appeared in Strategy and Tactics. So it's pretty well regarded S&T game. Okay, from the SPI era. There was a sequel game, which I think was by somebody other than Richard Berg, called Trail of the Fox. And then there was an expansion, I think, in Moves or Fire and Movement or something like that, called Fox Killed. Desert Fox Deluxe, which originally appeared in S&T magazine number 300, is an omnibus of all those games, plus other stuff, that basically lets you do the entirety of the North Africa campaign from 1940 all the way clear to the torch landings and the Allied liberation of Tunisia. So there's a lot there. The magazine sold really well. The word on it was really good. I have since heard that there's some other folks that have at least that magazine version that don't think very highly of it. I have the later boxed release, which does incorporate some additional improvements, but it also brings in at least one new mistake that wasn't in the magazine game in an incredibly on-brand thing for Decision to do. So, and that's they like messed up the TEC has like it's like from a different game or something like that. Triumphant Fox, who's the designer there? Stolen from the library of Carl Parody.
It's Dirk Blenneman.
Dirk Blenneman.
Like, are these games that are good?
I don't know that game has a really big following, but I haven't heard bad stuff about it either. I don't know. I do know that there's some Dirk Blenneman titles that people do like. So
I've got another one here, man.
So there's that. The Dirk Blenneman library. Maybe Carl Parody stole his games from the Dirk Blenneman library.
I got this one here.
Piercing the Reich by Gary. Game designed by Dirk Blenneman. Okay.
Yeah, it's a Carl Parody, yeah, by the way. Carl, I bug him for so many games, it's not even funny.
So I'm gonna fight you on this, Strelnikov, not because I think Clan Orange is a bad game, but because I think it's got exactly the reputation it deserves, as in extremely strong, Empire of the Sun variant from Mark Herman at C3I magazine. So I think it's really good, as is South Pacific, the other one, and I think the new one, which will be in the next C3I, which is Burma, which is another sort of mini campaign of Empire of the Sun. I expect that's going to be just as good as well. But frankly, I'm fine with whatever Mark would like to do that's using Empire of the Sun. I'm good. Carl Crater for the Wargame Bootcamp says, won by the sword, Halls of Montezuma, and 1805 Sea of Glory. Halls of Montezuma was a game that had some am I remembering correctly that it's a game that had some problems and a revised rule book or upgrade kit or something was released that solved those problems? Or maybe that's won by the sword, actually, or possibly both.
Isn't Halls of Montezuma some bordello in Las Vegas?
No, it's about the Mexican War. Between the U.S. and Mexico. So,
because Carl's been talking about bordellos in Las Vegas. So,
yeah, I was amongst the first to get that. Like several people got their Third World Wars on Friday, and I was like seeing the pictures start popping up. I'm like, God damn it! And then mine showed up at like 4 p.m. something like that. So the postman has a tendency to believe that all large packages come here. So today we got somebody else's exercise machine on our front doorstep. I like walk out to go to pick the car up, and I'm like, "What's this? It's an exercise machine. This is not. I didn't order this." So my wife said, "I think that's because we keep getting big packages all the time, and the other people 2 doors down do not."
Yeah, how do we define underrated there? Scott Beal.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, it's if this is why I'm going to say I don't think Plan Orange is underrated. Now, I do think that Plan Orange probably gets played less than South Pacific because it's less of like a lead into like main full Empire of the Sun. But it's all history too, and that might be why it might not be. That's an additional factor. So that Stegler would be talking about Desert Fox Deluxe, a game that he owns at least 3 copies of. One of them signed by Doc himself. So
yeah, Mike Anthony, good point.
Yeah. So everybody, remember to subscribe to the channel and push the thumbs up button and all that stuff.
Come on,
so I don't know where yours is. We didn't order you one of these. Remember, I asked you this. So yeah, Halls of Montezuma had a rules fix. Won by the Sword needed an update kit. That sounds like in line with my memory. So another Turning Point Stalingrad was okay. So I thought Turning Point Stalingrad was relatively well regarded. And in fact, a lot of those Area Impulse games are pretty fondly remembered and still played quite a bit. I agree with Mike Anthony on this. Yeah, Africa Core it's kind of busted. That's why even relatively quickly, I think it was a 65 release, 64, 65, 66, something like that. Relatively soon after that, Genco came out with their African campaign, which was basically, Africa Core, but not busted. So a lot of people have fond memories of Africa Core. You could certainly have fun with it. I think if you played it today for the first time, I think you probably wouldn't want to play it again because I think you would identify the busted mechanic pretty easily.
What about those huge games by SPI?
Like
any of those overrated or underrated, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah, I think so. All right, so I've got 3. I've got Atlantic Wall. So I'm talking SPI soapboxes, okay? And they had a couple other big ones that weren't in the soapbox. Descent on Crete, for example. I think Descent on Crete's probably not worth your time now. I think there's probably better games, big and small, on that topic. I think if you want a big game, I think you're better off with Operation Mercury from MMP. If you want a small game, I think there's numerous games on the airdrop on Crete that you could go for, some of which were, games by SPI. Of the soapboxes, I think War in Europe's a little bit, and I've played War in Europe. I think it's a neat game. It's got a lot of problems, and for that reason, I think it's a little more overrated than its sort of legendary reputation suggests. However, bearing in mind that these are really 2 separate games, there are linking rules, but they're not really the same game system at all. I do think War in the Pacific. Now, this is the SPI. I'm not sure who the designer was. It may have been Jim Dunnigan. It may have been Irad B. Hardy. It may have been somebody else. I think War in the Pacific's a little underrated. I think that game's got some really interesting things going on. Another underrated game, since we're on the subject, a couple of the other ones like Terrible Swift Sword, I think that's been replaced. I mean, I think the new version of that, 3 Days of Gettysburg, I think is a better game. Wellington's Victory, I could see a case that says Wellington. I saw I should check to see what it went for. Wellington's Victory in the soapbox, which is something I very seldom see. It's all over the place in the flats, but hardly ever see it in the soapbox. Was on eBay not that long ago, and I didn't bid on it because I don't need a second copy of Wellington's Victory. It's the Battle of Waterloo tactical game. I want to say it's at the regimental level. That sounds right, but I'm willing to be corrected on that. There's probably people that think that's the best Waterloo game ever, actually. I think that's probably true. I'd rather play that than Labatt. I can tell you that. War in Europe needs a bunch of fixes, frankly. There's the skeleton of a good game is in there, unquestionably, and you can unquestionably have fun with it. And certainly it's epic, but it's also got a lot of problems owing to not being play tested like much. Total War, yeah, we're not even going to go there. That's in its own category of burning Zamboni right there. I kind of agree with John on this, but on the other hand, it takes 4 to 7 hours, I think, to play Empire of the Sun, and maybe you've only got 2. You know, there's also those games as learning games give you a more restricted set of decisions to make, and so you can have a little bit less paralysis and confusion learning from South Pacific. Burma too, presumably, but Plan Orange, I don't know. I mean, it's a hypothetical war between the U.S. and the Japanese in the late 20s or early 30s, and there's a book on the subject that Mark based the game on, and it looks neat. So I don't think this is really true. I think that if your war in Europe is half-assed, then I think the SPI First World War. So there's 2 SPI games, and we at home we get this mixed up all the time. There's World War One, which is a very elegant and I think underrated Jim Dunnigan design, but that's like a 1 map or half map game. It's quite small. And then I think what he's talking about is the World War One kit that you could buy for War in Europe, which basically lets you play World War One on the War in Europe maps, which means it's like, you know, huge. So I don't think that I know that he tracked it down at great time and expense, but I don't think that is a worthwhile thing to pursue at this time. Nobody's mentioned that unless I've missed it. This is kind of true. Yeah, this is exactly kind of the problem with Africa Core. Actually, is it's the real decision space once you've played it like once is really small. This is true, actually. Not GMT's No Retreat North Africa does include Crete, but that's not like. I mean, you can have fun with that. I don't see why you couldn't have fun with that if you just want something relatively small. And that's not an unsophisticated game system either. So.
That's a Carl Paradis game.
Yes, it is. It is a Carl Paradis game. So now here's I think a really legit underrated game. Across 5 Aprils from Victory Games. Now this is I've talked about this before. I've never played Across 5 Aprils, but I understand that Battle Hymn draws fairly heavily upon Across 5 Aprils, and I have played Battle Hymn, and that's the current thing from Compass, and I found it to be of a scale that was unappealing to me. So I suspect that I would think the same thing about Across 5 Aprils, but it's a good game, right? And Across 5 Aprils designer Eric Lee Smith is, of course, a progenitor of that system. So underrated games that you don't need a ping pong game or Vassal to play. Well, we've named a bunch so far. Across 5 Aprils is excuse me, is an obvious one. Yeah, exactly. I think they play tested this less than they play tested War in Europe. They at least play tested a scenario. FWW. Oh, First World War, yeah. So Junta, yeah, not a war game, to be fair. But
why do people like that game so much, man?
A lot of people love that game. I've never played it. I'd probably enjoy it if I did. So, and your wallet, because I know what you paid for it. It was too much. Sicily from Victory in the West. Yeah, so I don't know that these are underrated either, but the vast gulf of time between 1981 and now might represent a bit of a barrier for people, but you can get unpunched copies of Sicily. This is one of like the last 2 or 3 STs that SPI published. It's that Sicily Race for Messina. It's got a very attractive map. It's a really good game. It's the Victory in the West system, and I think has held up extremely well. Ronald Nicholson from nearby Newark, Ohio.
That's Dratus, man.
Okay. And then John Longshore says that any game that he's bought that he can't pawn off to somebody else is underrated. Wooden Ships and Iron Men. So if we mean underrated in terms of BGG rating, that seems low for Wooden Ships and Iron Men, to be honest. I gotta wonder who at BGG is on dope, because that's a great game. That's not surprising, though. So BGG scoring it's like a really heavily weighted scoring. So there's basically an average rating. I might be misrepresenting this, but this is my understanding of how it works. There's an average rating, and there's a giant pool on every game of like automatic ratings at the average rating. It's part of the calculation, okay? And only when you start to overcome all those average ratings do you actually drift away from that average rating. So it's weighted in a way that I think is relatively unusual. I don't know. Maybe that's typical for rating systems. Who knows? Nolan's series of games concerning Native Americans, King Philip's War, which I have an unboxing of in the pipeline. So it's in the unboxing slush pile. It will be released eventually. That's like I assumed that was about one of the French King Philips. That turns out not to be the case. It's a significantly more interesting game than I thought it was going to be. This we talked about this last week, didn't we? Spi Sorcerer. It is actually a pretty neat looking game, but the map is a monstrosity. And I don't know. It's not a true war game. I don't think it's particularly close, but it looks fun to play. Doug is not, I think, wrong about that. Yeah, you take the BGG ratings with a big grain of salt anyway, right? So Stegler's 100% right about that.
Is that the game you gifted me, Artie?
Yes, it is. Flying Colors is a different game, right? They're both Age of Sail games, but Flying Colors is more of a squadrons-based game than an individual ship-based game. If you play the two side by side, you'll find out very quickly that Wooden Ships and Iron Men is more detailed, and therefore it's really kind of hard to run more than 2 or 3 ships. Whereas in Flying Colors, you can do that very easily.
No. No, I'm listening, fucko.
So I have no idea.
Yeah, no, I'm just listening, man. I'm listening. I just got back from an old folks' home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd be depressed too, man. I'd rather work for Jeff Bezos funding his next dick rocket to the moon.
No.
So Star Viking, there we go. So was that TSR or metagaming? I have kind of a mini box in my head for that, but both metagaming and TSR produced games in that format.
Oh, I'm gonna go get other games.
Amigos and Insurrectos. That actually sounds pretty neat. I've never even seen a copy of Battles Magazine though. SPI Solomon's Campaign. Yeah, I've seen that though. I never played it, nor do I own it. No, I don't think so. There's a couple. There's one called Mare. I think it's called Mare Nostrum from S&T, from the Decision era S&T. It's also got a pretty good reputation. Yeah, exactly. King Philip in this case is a Native American leader rather than like King Philip from, say, France, which was my assumption. Never having looked at the thing before I got an unboxing to. Oh, that's interesting. K-Bar 54. First of all, welcome to the stream. I didn't know you could do that. There's a whole lot of stuff that you can do with the BGG database that I am not familiar with necessarily. Wilderness War. That's interesting. So Wilderness War is. Am I thinking of the right one? That's this Boko Reiki game, isn't it? Am I mixing that up? Gloomhaven. I've been tempted by Gloomhaven a couple of times, but it's like $150 or something like that. It's a huge box, right? You get a ton of stuff in it. And it's one of those legacy type games where you kind of gradually explore your way through the contents of the box. There's a video game version of it that's normally a lot cheaper. And I know it's a DLC fest, but oh yeah. You're absolutely right. Mike Anthony nails it. That was a Heritage game. Heritage released a number of games. Swordbearer was the one that I had. Dwarf Star. So I believe there is a free print and play version authorized by Dwarf Star of Star Viking and Barbarian Prince, which is the one that more people know about, on a website somewhere. It should be linked off the BGG page. I'm not really into bending over, crawling around on the floor anymore. When I was 10, I could do that. I'm not doing that now. There we go. Yep. I don't know how closely it was based on the book, but there is an H. Beam Piper book called Star Viking, which is in a series that's pretty good. And H. Beam Piper was one of the literary influences for Traveller. In fact, the sword worlds that are in Traveller are also in Star Viking. So, Mech War 2. I can't really speak to Mech War 2, to be honest, or Objective Moscow, or I can say that I'm not really terribly interested in the topic of Mech War 2. Where Objective Moscow actually looks interesting, at least. I don't know if it's any good or not. Yeah, Gloomhaven is on Steam now. So this is a system that I have talked about as extremely influential a number of times. It's Panzer Brigadier. This is a Dunnigan design, was released by SPI and S&T, and in a box version. And then they later pawned it off to Avalon Hill, who released an inferior quality version. Physically, not necessarily. Like, pretty much the same game, UFO. Is that in the shrink wrap?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, don't open it.
Seriously?
I wouldn't. Well, was that stolen from the Library of Carl Parody as well?
No, I think I actually bought this, but I mean, it's a bit, the shrink is a bit busted here, but it's shrinked.
Well, the shrink's 45 or 50 years old, so.
So is this worth? It's not.
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea, to be honest. It's just not something I'm sufficiently interested in to have picked up. Now, if you got a shrink wrap copy of that for like $10, good.
I don't think.
In that case, open it up. Have fun. Go crazy. Open it up. Have fun with it. Play.
But I mean, if I can get $1,000 for this, I'd rather get $1,000.
Well, I don't think that's the case. But yeah, hold on. Let's see what BGG says it is. What's that?
1978, man.
Yeah, so if you're just looking for, Jesus. This is going to be a pain to find. 1976 is what this says. Released. Oh, that's why. Originally released by Gamma 2. Your 78 game is probably the Avalon Hill. Well, it's
Avalon Hill.
Gamma 2 is the company that turned into Columbia Games. Originators of the block game. Yeah, BGG has like new copy for $18. So my advice to you would be to open it up. I did that with Source of the Nile. I thought it was going to be worth a bundle. I got a shrink wrap copy of it for something like $25. It sat on it for a couple of years, and then looked at the prices. I'm like, yeah, the prices on it aren't that crazy, and I just said, oh, screw it, I'll keep it. Opened it.
This, I think, is an underrated game. Hold on a second. Maybe I can do this.
Panzer 44 and Desert War. I think you're talking about... so Open Fire, was that a solitaire game?
Yeah, it's a solitaire game based on the ambush system.
Okay. So I think you're talking about Panzer Armor in 88 from Yaquinto. That's the James Day system that's back with GMT now. Those are supposed to be good if you're into, tank games. I actually got a copy of Blackbeard. After I spent a long time, I was unwilling to pay what the lunatics on eBay wanted for a copy of Blackbeard. I did finally get a copy for the $25 price that I wanted to pay. It was
the second edition? The
original edition. Well, so there's two Avalon Hill editions, and then there's a game from GMT called Blackbeard, designed by the same designer, Richard Berg, but it's a completely different game. I wanted the Avalon Hill version. The Avalon Hill version is basically a pirate simulator, and I think that's awesome. The GMT game tries to be more of a board game, and I liked it a lot less. So, Panzer 44. I can picture that in my head.
Panzer.
But I didn't have any experience with that.
Is this a good game or a crap game?
It's worth a shot. It doesn't go for a pile of money, I can tell you that. I've got a copy of Kremlin, which there's been a new version of, but I guess the versions of Kremlin differ relatively a lot. So there's places that do this. Carl says he loves the supply system in Halls of Montezuma. So it's one of those games that I think is a good candidate to be an underrated game because it's the people who have actually played it with the fix ups say it's really good. And there's really not very much on the Mexican War either, right? I mean, there's a the odd magazine game here and there, and there's Gringo for Great Battles of the American Civil War, and that's kind of it. So firepower. I never played this, and it is a rather uninspiring box. I can.
Is that the one with the triangle there?
Maybe. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, that's a crappy box, man.
Pull this up. Yeah, well, it's unquestionably, I think, an ugly color, but ugly box doesn't mean the game's bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's not a great. That sure looks like sounds like a Vietnam game, though, isn't it? So it's like a general modern game designed by S. Craig Taylor. You know what? That's enough to get me to want to take a look at it right there. That designer. S. Craig Taylor was a great designer, and in fact, I don't think Flat Top's underrated at all. Wooden Ships and Iron Men, Flat Top, also S. Craig Taylor games.
What about Time Tripper?
I don't think there's. I don't know. I really don't know. It's definitely a novel game.
But it's what? It's you play it once, it's over?
Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. You could go. It's a time travel game, so when you're done, you could go back in time and play it again.
Oh God.
So yeah, reshrinking stuff is generally considered a douche move.
But yeah,
and I will note that reputable sellers do not do that. So, like Noble Knight does not do that.
No.
So, I believe that this is a correct statement by Mickey here. I think the problem with the original is that there's not enough player interaction, and that's a complaint that people have. And it would be on brand for Avalon Hill from the era to be longer than it should be too. But I kind of want it as a solitaire game, to be honest. Yeah. That's the new ones from Jolly Roger Games or something like that, I think. Oh, Ronald Nicholson was a playtester on Panzer Command. Very influential game, right? First chip pull board war game in the modern chip pull sense, and the progenitor of the Grand Tactical Series games and the CSS series as well, for that matter. Dragon Star Rising. Yeah, I remember it, but I don't know that I've ever seen a copy. I remember seeing ads for it in Dragon Magazine.
Who did that game?
I think not anybody we've necessarily heard of. Is October War well regarded? Because I've got a copy of that. I didn't think it was. Somebody gave me a copy of that. I didn't know that, though. The Platoon is a simplified version of that. Remember the Avalon Hill Platoon tie-in. We got a lot of good discussion going on about Halls of Montezuma here. So Carl says that it's just a clarity thing, maybe, between the update. Texas Revolution. Let's look at that. It sounds like somebody published it. Ming's Enterprises. Is that a box? Yeah, looks like we got pieces. It's actually not such a bad looking map for 1981. That's an interesting curio right there. Somebody's selling one in Germany for 30 euros, which is not that bad a price. So get on that if you're interested in Texas Revolution here. War of Independence from Mexico. Boy, there's not a lot of games on that topic. DTW, Dice Tower West. Yeah, so the big GMT thing is canceled at Dice Tower West, but Dice Tower West is not canceled, so it's still happening. Lucky little Luxembourg, get out of here.
How can it be underrated? They want
How
a
can
Charlie.
it be underrated? It's got a map and everything.
They want a Charlie.
So, yeah, you know, hey, I've got October War. One of these days I'll try it. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the first. Maybe it'll be the game that makes me fall in love with the Arab-Israeli wars. Yeah, the whole war room and was like a thing that was going to happen there. That's what folded. So
2023, Jesus, it feels like sci-fi.
It kind of does, yeah.
2023, Logan's Run.
I think that was in like 2500, actually. I've read the book, actually. It's been a long time, though. They keep talking about remaking Logan's Run.
Yeah, I know. Don't remake it. Don't remake it.
I don't think they need to. The original's actually, I think, still holds up really well. So there used to be. I assume this is gone now, but there used to be. So Logan's Run was filmed, like all the outdoor in the city scenes were filmed in like this big shopping mall somewhere in the upper Midwest, like Minneapolis or something like that. Or might even have been Chicago. But there was a corridor, like a long corridor between terminals at O'Hare Airport in Chicago for a long time, where it looked exactly like that decor. And they would even play this weird boop, beep, boop, 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 beep, boop, beep, music when you were in there. And I'm like, it's the Logan's Run corridor. I'm telling you guys. That's probably gone now. It was super weird. Mickey, I haven't heard anything official. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of quality gaming happening there anyway. But I don't think GMT, at least, provided what I would consider a clear reason for it. But by all means, look at the last update.
Well, hold on. GMT was not attending the Dice Tower West.
But they were a sponsor of
They were sponsoring it, yeah.
So, Vassal module ready. So that's cool. Yeah, no kidding. Somebody did a Vassal module for this thing. So there you go. I agree with Mike Anthony on this. I'm in full agreement with that. And they only showed the movie, even though they cut some stuff out. They only showed the movie late at night, where here in Ohio in the 80s. So Stingler's talking about Year of the Rat. That's
what is that? The Year of the Rat?
That's an S&T game as well. Somebody mentioned it up thread. John Stanley mentions S&T 1972 North Vietnam Easter Offensive. So, I don't know about any of the individual people travel plans. I just know that the official event track got canceled. So read GMT's statement on it. Gene, more informative than me.
Carl, Gene was going to GMT West.
Dice Tower West is in Vegas. They're in California Central Valley. That's not that much. You could drive that. That's not that much of a drive.
I'm surprised Gene would go.
I don't know. I don't know where Gene shows up. What am I?
Nowhere.
Sword of Rome is a neat looking game. I do have it, and I have not managed to play it yet. That's one of those that will almost certainly get played at some point.
Really?
So, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've never run it. Well, I don't know. Hell, I might have talked to Gene at some point. At one point, GMT did have their own booth at Origins, right? When I was there. Some of those years where I know Mark Herman and Richard Berg and Gene, too, probably were there. So, hell, I don't know. But I didn't recognize anybody at the time. None of those people. Mark Herman's easy to spot because he's 7.5 feet tall. So, best looking underrated game. I'll tell you what, South Pacific looks really good. Although again, I don't know that I'd say that's underrated. But so this actually is called. I think it's going to be called Halls of Montezuma or the Halls of Montezuma. Fort Circle Games is working on a follow-up to the Shores of Tripoli. It's going to be another, light war game type of thing. I would imagine. But that is in the works. So, Sword of Rome is a perennial favorite in John Size Group in the sunny Philippines. So, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's not like you got to stay at the game convention to have fun in Vegas, right? All kinds of attractions are available from of historical interest, no less. Highly recommended by me is the Imperial Palace Auto Museum. All kind of cool stuff there. So, by all means, and it's relatively cheap because you got to walk through the casino to get to it. So, yeah, highly recommended if you stop at the Imperial Palace, which is kind of a dive, but the car museum is cool. So, Barlev, yeah, actually, Barlev's a good call too. I think that's a game that's pretty well regarded, but did not have a big audience.
Isn't that a Compass game?
Well, the remake is, yeah. The original was, I think, from GDW, wasn't it? Yeah, that sounds right. Conflict Games is what BGG said, but Conflict Games is one of those things that turned into GDW. So,
great, it's a John Hill game, man.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There's no information on Conflict Games on BGG, but you'll notice that all of their games, and about all of them, but several of their games ended up at GDW. So,
John Hill, that squad leader, right?
Yeah, that's that. I assume it's that John Hill.
Bloody hell!
There's at least two. No, this is that John Hill. Yeah. So looking at. So this looks interesting too. Yalu, the Chinese counteroffensive in Korea, November 1950 to May 1951. If you look at this thing, it's like this is like a big chunk of the Korean War in this box. You can see that, right? You know, you can kind of picture this. That's the Liangdong Peninsula, I think. You can see Seoul on the map that's under some counters there. So yeah, big chunk of the Korean Peninsula is on this map, and the game's got a lot more scope than I thought it did. You can see 1977. That'd be I don't think Conflict Games was around in 77, but then this is another one that's gotten redone by Compass too. So, and this is another John Hill, no less. So I'd be real curious to see. Todd Davis did the map on this, huh? Okay, that's interesting. So are they like, so there's a basic and a deluxe in here? That actually sounds pretty neat.
Well, the map you just showed, it's North Korea, man.
Yeah, exactly. What's the question?
Nothing.
Okay. Fast Carriers. Yep, that was an S&T game, if I recall correctly. They did when I was there, but it's been a long time, so I don't know if they still do that. Sting was talking about Gringo, and I haven't played any of those battles, but there's not only Gringo, there's a Gringo expansion. So you can, if you have the expansion, I think I don't have the expansion, but if you have that in the expansion, you can get a lot of battles in the Mexican War. And if you want to do that at a tactical level, remember a lot of those famous names of the U.S. Civil War became famous names in the Mexican War, right? This is interesting. I didn't know this. Maybe the Fast Carriers is something to take a look at then. I don't think it's goes for $1 million. Let me check that. I don't think that goes for $1 million. Instantly, you see the cover in you. It's like, bing, Redmond Simonson cover there. No question about it. Map's not very big.
Not very
nice.
This is
a 75 release. Interesting. Looks like it does not go for a pile of money either. So if anybody's interested in that. I think the Napoleonic. So this is part of the Napoleonic Brigade or Napoleonic Brigade series. I think it's Napoleonic. I'm qualming over whether it's Napoleonic Battle series. It's Napoleonic Brigade series. This actually, I think the whole series is underrated. Actually, I think they did 5 games in total. I don't know about Talavera specifically, but I've looked at Asper Nestling, and it's a pretty neat system. I think that whole series was underrated and never really took off. I think part of that is that there wasn't that many games in it. But I think the Civil War Brigade series too had a lot of games, and a lot of people really fondly remember it. And the Napoleonic series just never got quite that much traction. Apparently, sounds like they closed it. So, John Hill, Siege of Jerusalem. Is that the game we're talking about, or just Jerusalem? Or am I talking about the song? I might be thinking of the song. Yeah, I don't even know what we're talking about here.
I'm thinking of the Avalon Hill game.
No, this is definitely the one we're talking about. From Mayfair. Oh, my goodness. Tactical Arab-Israeli War. God, if I was into this, I would have picked up the Avalon Hill Arab-Israeli Wars. This is good. It's the slow carriers because he's so damn complicated. This is interesting. I'd be interested to see the inside of that, but that's going to be a bandwidth question. Marrakesh on Paradise in Vegas is great Mediterranean food with belly dancers. Okay, cool. That belly dancing thing is like not even weird either. I mean, I know like whole troops of belly dancers personally, and I'm as square as they come. So don't let that scare anybody off.
Hey, how many games did SPI put out per year, man?
Per year? Well, so they were around from about 1969 to early 1982. So let's call it 81. And if was there a new version of this? Huh. Look at this. Cool stuff to publish a war game? Really? Huh. That's weird. Okay, what were we talking about?
How many games SPI put out a year, man?
All right, so let's look at fast carriers again. So, this is I'm not counting it, right? And BGG's number is not going to be that accurate, but let's say 320 divided by, what would be about 12 or 13 years. So, about 20 games a year. That's a lot, right? Considering Avalon Hill was doing like 2. So,
seriously?
Yeah. So for a long time, that Avalon Hill's like official release schedule was 1 game a year, and then they eventually increased it to 2. And then I think by the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, they were a little looser with it. But yeah, Avalon Hill was around a lot longer too, so there's that. But that's a lot of games, 20, 30 games a year. I'm not doing the actual calculation, by the way. So I got a special treat for folks if you want to see it. So let me kill this.
Hey folks, it's Ardwulf, Dan Pancaldi.
What the hell?
This was
Hey folks, it's
Christ.
I was like looking around today, and I'm like, I know I have this footage.
Were you drunk?
No.
Hey folks, it's Ardwulf.
Anyway, so I want to make sure I don't miss anything. John Size kindly said I should show up in the Philippines, which I think there's a great, which I think sounds like a great idea. I'll be lucky to go to Seattle. We're going to Seattle next month, so. After the Holocaust. I'm thinking of Invasion America. I saw Invasion America on a table not that long ago. I forget where. But After the Holocaust was also in that Power Politics series, I think, a lot of which were games that were released in rather deluxe editions by SPI. I don't do that. We've talked about this. I don't partake of that stuff. So I if I did, I would eat all the chips, and I don't want to eat all the chips. Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question that I think you'd need more knowledge about. This is a Jim Ozarski question, frankly. I think probably no, but then there's kind of the big exception in the room, which is the big exception of a lot of the Napoleonic Wars, which is Napoleon, right? Napoleon very often did not give his commanders much leeway. But yet, on the other hand, this kind of thing still happens. Think of Grouchy marching off to nowhere while the guns were going off in the background. He was supposed to be, marching to Napoleon's aid on the day of Waterloo. So this was a thing that absolutely happened where, commanders' orders get lost or commanders flake out or whatever. Totally a thing that happens. A great theater to see that is probably the Peninsula War, actually. So I think that you'd maybe have to tweak the numbers and the tables for it, sure. But I think the same logic applies. I think they're similar enough that you could use basically the same system. Dan is sitting here eating popcorn. You're also invited to the sunny Philippines.
Thank you very much, John.
I just ran out of time was the thing with that. I appreciate Dan picking up the slack. Just didn't have the time.
What the hell's the matter with you, man?
I got a job. I don't have the time.
So what? I got a job that depresses me. I'm still happy. Look,
we're gonna have Dan and I in the same room at some point at WBC. I suspect. So
let me tell you something. If the Chicago Pipe Show is at the same time as WBC, that's a toss-up.
Chicago Pipe Show. Apparently, that's a thing.
Yeah, man. It's like board games. It's a thing.
No, it's in May. The Chicago Pipe Show's in May. WBC's in July.
How far are you from Chicago?
About 8 hours. 8 hours. About 7 hours, something like that.
Ah, damn.
Not that far. Closer to Indy. I've been thinking I'd like to go to Gen Con, but that's probably not a this year thing.
Maybe don't you ever hop and skip from Gen Con?
Yeah, I'm like 2 or 2.5 hours from Gen Con. But it's a project to go to Gen Con, right? Just the amount of the size of the show and all that stuff. It's just crazy. I don't even know if you could get tickets. I imagine you can't. So
all those people, man, wearing masks and farting and not taking showers. Are you crazy, man?
That's not nearly as bad as it used to be. Doug's right about this. That there are differences in the command problems that were had in between the two conflicts. I think you could still use the same basic idea to model them, though. Yes, this is absolutely DCB. This is absolutely true. Napoleon, it was like there's some guys running the thing for the French doing very badly. Napoleon comes in, says, "I'm going to show you all you clowns what to do," wins a couple of battles and leaves, and then they're all on their own again, and everything falls apart. So that is the 10-second summary of command problems in the Peninsular War. Now, like a lot of the Spanish commanders were fairly bad, but so was, Joseph, Napoleon's brother. We talked about this. Didn't we talk about this with Jim? Joseph specifically was a clown. He didn't help anything. The competent coalition army there with the British, along with their staunch allies, the Portuguese. So it was the quagmire, right? That's exactly how people put it. We're going to have to talk about this. So hilariously, as soon as we're done here, I have a podcast to be on about operational Napoleonics. So that will be our Armchair Dragoons podcast. So you'll see it in a week or 2 weeks or whatever. So this is true too. There's a fair number of colorful characters in the Napoleonic period too. The problem is they weren't Americans, so we know less about them. But the Civil War specifically has lots of colorful characters. That's absolutely true, and it's one of the reasons I think that for the continuing interest in the American Civil War. I don't know if you know anything about Devil Dan Sickles, then you know that I'm not sure that's what was being said there. Although, was he one of? No, he was just some rando, right? He didn't get a West Point education, but the guys who did included Custer and Harry Heath. Neither of whom, really performed all that. Well, Custer performed well at Gettysburg, but Harry Heath not so much. Yeah, this is true. Some of those guys almost got shot too. So there's that. Yeah, these vary too. Some of those generals of volunteers ended up getting regular ranks eventually as well. Some of the more capable ones. Shanks Evans. This sounds great. I mean, we could easily have a whole show about Civil War personalities, right? Certainly, there were a lot. I'm not sure if we're talking about Civil War specifically here, but there's a lot of colorful individuals, both North and South. A lot of incompetence, both North and South. Frankly, at the beginning, at least, the South was generally better at fighting wars than the North was at all levels. The men, the officers, the logistics, everything was better. And all of those things declined, and the Union got better as the war went on. But at no point was the South free of politically appointed knuckleheads. So did Napoleon have a problem with insubordinate generals? Sometimes, yeah. Well, Napoleon had a problem with anybody that didn't do exactly what he thought he told them to do. So yeah, it wasn't insubordination so much as that sometimes Napoleon was guilty of giving unclear orders, and that was a thing that happened. Oh, that's pretty awesome. Devil Dan Sickles. Oh yeah. Braxton Bragg's another one. Total clown. Custer was at the bottom. There were, I think, 3 last in their class West Point graduates at Gettysburg. Heath was one. Custer was one. I'm trying to remember who the third one was. Sickles had a bit of a point that he was given some fairly undefensible ground to cover. So he went and took the defensible ground that was way out ahead. There's no guarantee that the battle would have continued to be fought in the way that it was had Sickles not done that, right? I think predicting what would have happened has been unpredictable. McClellan was consumed by his own. This statement is true, by the way. Like, McClellan was a pretty good trainer and organizer, but he was a clown on the battlefield. Now, to some extent, you have to blame that on the intelligence that, and I've talked about this before, that McClellan was working with, where he was constantly being told by the Pinkertons that he was outnumbered 3-1 by the massive Confederate army, which was at no point the case. But McClellan was also consumed by his own ego. I mean, imagine the cheek that it takes to then run for president against Abraham Lincoln in 1864 and say that, I can run this war better than him, and have a bunch of copperheads voting for him. So, yeah, he was absolutely a victim of his own ego as well.
But McClellan was the general, so he had the last word, eh?
Who?
McClellan.
Well, not till Lincoln fired him.
Well, no, I'm just saying. We're talking about his intelligence. They would cut to him and tell him he was outnumbered 3-1.
Well, yeah, that's true. But, I mean, you got to, yes, the ultimate responsibility falls to the ultimate person in charge. That's generally speaking an accurate statement. There's a very interesting War of 1812 game coming from Compass called 1812. Oddly enough, it's a very interesting looking game. Keep an eye out for that. Yeah, George Pickett was also last in his class at West Point. Although you can't blame Pickett for anything that happened there. No. Pickett was mortified, was absolutely betrayed. Thought he had absolutely been hung out to he and his men had been hung out to dry by everybody, especially Robert E. Lee, and he held a grudge too. And he lived longer than Robert E. Lee, so which Lee didn't that long outlive the Civil War.
We're talking about Gettysburg, right?
This was absolutely not McClellan's stated position, which was to continue fighting the war. He as a campaign plank, he absolutely did not make that it settled with the South. So that is incorrect. Now, would that have happened? I and a lot of people think so, because support for the war among people who were supporting McClellan was very soft. But that's not what McClellan was saying. Okay. So John Sy mentions these are all War of 1812 games. Mr. Madison's War, which is a good reputation. That's from Clash of Arms, I think. Is that right? Maybe. Amateurs to Arms. Maybe Amateurs to Arms is from Clash of Arms. I don't know. Mr. Madison's War is a Gilbert Collins game from GMT. Dawn's Early Light, which is relatively recent from Compass, and then 1812, which is coming from Compass. So yeah, that's probably true. All right, folks, we are out of time. 76 people watching. That is an outstanding number.
And we stayed on topic.
Nah, more or less. We drifted a little bit, but we stayed on topic more or less. We could stay on topic for an hour if we really want to. I mean, even Vegas came up, and we didn't even start talking about strippers and coke. So
I know someone did.
Progress is made. I'm sure it was mentioned. So all right. So reminder, folks, that the show next week will be on Dan's channel. We will be holding it at the regular time, but I will be doing it from the road. So bear that in mind. Otherwise, everything will be groovy. So everybody have a great night. We'll see you all next week.